Okay, so here we are. We need to make this lock screen maker app work. They have given us a list of icons to randomly choose between. So there is our list. I assume we're going to put some loops in because there are 20 icons provided that they have already created in design mode with no properties other than the fact that they're on the screen. They do have a location, but they don't have an icon attached to them so that they actually show up when you run. Um, there's nothing showing, but when we click colors, it should give each icon a particular random color. It should give it a random X and Y value, and it should give each icon a random one of these. We should choose randomly from this list to pick which shape is going to be attached to that icon. And they're going to be um, all the same, right? When you run the program, you notice that, whoops, we want to go to the second bubble here. When you run the program the way they have it, they're always all stars. If you change the shape, they're all moons or hearts or trees. Okay, the locations can be changed by clicking the button, the colors can be changed by clicking the button, but you don't have a mix of different shapes on the screen. That's something important to notice. So when we go to the workspace, they've already designed a list for us. I'm going to dive right in to my event handlers because basically when I click on the buttons, that's when I want something to happen. I want those um, icons to take on some characteristics. So I'm going to start with the shapes button because without shapes, we don't really have anything to see. So the name of that button is shapes button. When a user clicks on the shapes button, I want to go through the list of all those icons on the screen and change the property of them to have one of these shapes randomly chosen. So actually, I am going to create a variable, and I'm going to put all my variables at the top of the program, my main variables, that is called current shape. And I'm going to randomly select a current shape from the list by accessing the icons list. Which element of the icons list? I'm going to access a random number between 0 and how many icons are there to choose from? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 8 icons to choose from. So I want between 1 and 8, maybe 0 and 8. 0 and 7. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, a random number between 0 and 7. So that should be able to retrieve an icon list from the list, an icon name from the list, put it into current shape. Then in the event handler, I want to make a list that, a loop that will run through all of the icons, and they have names icon 0 through icon 19. So my loop control variable, I, is going to start with 0, and it's going to go as long as I is less than 20. I am going to increment I, adding 1 to it each time, and that is going to help me build up the name of the icon I want to change its shape. So I'm going to set the property of which icon. It's going to start with the word icon, but then add the I value to that. And what do I want to change? I want to change the icon, where is it? I want to change, what is the property? There should be an image. There we go. The image on that icon. What do I want to change it to? I want to change it to the current shape that has been chosen. Okay, so let's just see how that works for now. When I click the Shapes button, I got a whole bunch of smiley faces. Okay, if I put a watch on the current shape, you'll see that it has a value of FA Smile O. So that worked. Now, it occurred to me that if I want to click the button again and have it change to a different shape, I should also include basically this same line of code inside the event handler. I'll put it right above the loop so that the shape will change every time I click the button, not just the first time. So this will pick a new random number. Now, did I choose the right? I'm a little bit concerned that I didn't choose the right numbers here for min and max. Let me just read the instructions again on that random number. Let's see. Have to be careful with the details, otherwise we might miss out on the last possible one. Returns a random number in the closed range from min to max. So including those numbers. Excuse me. All right, let me X out of that. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That should do it. 0 to 7. I could get an index 0. I could get an index 7. It could pick any of those shapes whenever I click the Set Shapes button. Now, I also am going to want to create an on-event handler for the colors button. Okay, let's randomize the colors of each shape. So in this case, we want each shape to have its own possible random color. But first, let's just get started with the on-event handler. The event we want to handle is if a user clicks on the colors button, and the name of it is indeed, let's see, I'm going to go back to my activity guide, colors button, right, capital B. Colors button. If a user clicks on the colors button, then what do we want to do? We want to iterate through, go through all of the icons again. So we're going to need a for loop. And we're going to use var I gets 0. Once again, we know there are 20 icons, so we're going to say I is less than 20 and increment I by a value of 1 using I++ for the for loop. And then this time, for each icon, we're going to set the property, not of its, you know what, first I'm going to generate a color. I'm going to do var color gets, and now I'm going to get a random set of colors. You know what, I'm going to have to do 3 variables, one for the red, color R, color G, because the RGB values. Okay, so I'm going to get a random number. Basically, to create a random number, a random color, you need a set of 3 numbers. The first one represents how much red, the second one represents how much green, the third one represents how much blue. And the min and max is always from 0 to 255 for colors. We actually skipped unit 1. So generating random colors was going to be in unit 1 digital information, which we will get back to and do some more. But for now, Just trust me. And I was recently refreshed on this by looking at the practice problems we did back in lesson 7. You'll see, let's see, I think it was one of these. There was screen elements maybe. Here we go. Setting the property of the color of the text to random values. Now they did it all in one shot here. They did RGB and then they put random number, random number, random number. I'm separating it out into 3 variables, color R, color G, color B. I could even just call this red, green, and blue. I kind of like that better. So that now I'm going to set the property of the current icon, but I don't know what the current icon actually is. I'm just going to use icon plus I, so that as the loop runs, it will supply a new I value of the variable I to create the name of an icon, the next icon. Now, which property do I want to set? I want to set the color of this. So let me find, what are my options? Color, what property? Oh, I got a lot of things going on here. Let's say color. Set the property of icon I. Maybe in design mode I can take a look at, for an icon, the color would be called, maybe it's pen color. Let me see, what is it? What is the options here? Is pen color? All right, pen color. And do I have to, Okay. Took me a little experimenting, but I figured out that the property that we want to change the color of, by putting these quotes here and just looking at the options that came up. There was background color, that didn't work. There was border color, that didn't work. Icon color is the one that works. Okay, so when you go ahead and run this, the shapes come up all one color to start with, black, but then when you click the colors button, it has a random color generated for each individual icon. You can change the shapes to different things. Now they're very small, but the colors are changing every time I click the color button. So I'd say that's working. Now, the size of the shapes is not what I really would like right now. So I think on the next event handler, I'm going to include, when I change the location of each icon, I'm also going to change its size to a random size between a certain range of sizes. So we need one more event handler for the locations button. And the name of that button is, go to my activity guide. Yep, locations button. All right, once again, I need a loop to run through all of the icons, starting with icon 0 and going I is less than 20, I plus plus, and basically here I'm going to be setting the property of the X, the Y, and the size of the icon using random values. Okay, so I'm going to do set property for not exactly icon 0, right? It's going to be icon plus I, whatever I is, so that each time it runs through the loop, it's setting the values for a different icon. So let's see, x. We're going to set the x coordinate to a random number, and the values of x on the screen range from, I believe it's 0 to 360. So I'll just do 10 to 350 so we don't have them really running off the screen too far. Sounds reasonable. And then I'm going to do the same thing, set the property of the same icon. So the name of the identifier is icon plus I. And I'm going to set the Y location to a random value. The random number this time from 0 to, I think it's 420. But then we've got these buttons at the bottom, so let me just go into, I'm going to reset it. Looks like 400 would be good. So from like 0 to 400, yeah. Maybe even just 10 to 400 so it doesn't run off the top of the screen, like parts of it, too much. So this gives me random location, X and Y values for the icon, but I also want to set the size. So it looks like width and height. Oh, icon size, there we go. And these are our choices. Looks like, how are we gonna pick a random number? Well, let's just see what happens if we randomize. Just do a random number between, whoops, not math.random. I'm gonna do random number between 10 and 100. How's that? That's pixels, I believe. So let's run it and see what happens. Get some shapes on the screen, change their colors, locations. All right. They all changed locations, but I did get errors or warnings saying icon size is not a property of this element. So maybe it's not truly an icon, maybe it's an image. And let me go to the icon in design mode and see what is available. So click on like one of the icons, go to design mode. Height and width would be basically the size. So I guess we're going to have to change the height and width to be the same value. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new variable real quick right here called size. I'm going to generate a random number between 10 and 50. How's that? Or well, we'll make it 100. Maybe if that's too big, we can go back and change it. And then I'm going to use that for the width. Basically, an icon is probably a square little image, so the width and the height should be the same size. So let me just copy and paste that. Whoa. Copy. Nope. Paste. Change it to height. And this way I'm generating a random size. I'm storing it temporarily in a variable just so that I can use that same size for both the height and width to make it a square image. All right, so the one thing I want to point out is that in the loop where I did that, every time through the loop, the size is getting chosen differently because it's inside the loop. So each icon will have a different size, as well as each icon having its own randomly generated X and Y coordinate. They're not all going to end up being the same size. If I wanted them all to be the same size, I would have to just generate the random number size at the top, like right in here, above the loop. If I were to move, let me show you this. First of all, let me run it, show you how it works. Shapes, colors, here we go, locations. The locations also change the size. There's quite a variety of large and small. We could make it bigger if we were to change this. But now let me show you what happens if I were to move this outside here, so it's not inside the loop anymore. Then every time I click the locations button, they would all get the same size, different each time, but all uniform. So each time for the click of the button would give you a new size, but each icon would have that same size. So actually, I think it's more like the style of what they showed us in the example to generate the size inside the loop, so every icon has its own size. I also noticed when I went back to look at how the sample was running that there was a background color, and each time you click on colors, the background color could change too. So I'm going to add that in there. You probably only need the background color to be set once every time the button is clicked, not every time an icon is changed color. So here I'm going to do set property of, and that would be the home screen. Let's see, what's the name of, yeah, home screen. What property do I want to set? Background color. And what do I want to set it to? I'm going to do an RGB, but I'm going to pick a random RGB color. So that's going to be something where I do another here, random number. And I'm going to just do it right in place because I want to show you the two different strategies. You could generate the random red, green, and blue values here separately and then put them into the RGB function. Or you can actually just fill the 3 slots of the RGB function with random number generation from 0 to 255. So random number 0 to 255 just gets you basically a value that serves as a valid range of color for a red, green, or blue component of the main color, because all color is made up of those 3 things. So here I've got, put a semicolon at the end, a new thing I added that when the icons are changed color, I'm also going to change the background color. So it's not working. Set property. Let's see, home screen. An ID home screen does not exist. It must be capital S. Let's try that. Shapes, get them on the screen. Colors. Ah, yes, now I have a different color for the background. And you can change the shapes, the locations, move around. Is this how it looks when we run the sample app? Is there anything else that I'm not doing or I'm doing too differently? Let's see, when we first run it in the sample app, all of the icons initially show up on the screen with a background color rather than a blank screen. Then you can change the shapes. Wait, when you change the shapes, they stay in the same locations. When you change the colors, the background color does change also. When you change locations, it's just locations. And size. Okay. Then there's that sound we did not add yet. All right. So I think what we really need now is just an initial setup where we kind of start off with the shape chosen, like the current shape. We should start with an initial setup. So I'm thinking about it. I kind of would like to just make one function that does the initial setup of the screen. So I'm going to go down to the bottom and I'm going to write a function. This time it's not going to be called update screen. It's just a function to put everything related to initializing it at the beginning in one place. So maybe we will call it setup screen. And so what do I want to do in setup screen is I kind of want to do a lot of the things that these buttons are doing just for the first time with a particular value, and then the user can click the buttons to make these things happen again. So for I going from 0 to 20, I can kind of do everything in one loop. I can set the current shape to whatever it was initially randomized to. Okay. Then I can change, I could do this whole setting the property of the icon color. But this time I'll just do random right in place, random number from 0 to 255. Let me move the toolbox so I have more space to type out here. Random number 0 to 255, and then the third random number from 0 to 255. So that generates the random numbers right in place as they are needed to set the red, green, blue values of the color of the icon. Then I also want to set the X and Y location in here for that particular icon, each icon as it runs through the loop, and I want to set the width and height to a particular size. So I'm going to do all these things at once in the setup screen, and I do need to generate that size variable, and I'm just going to call it start size, just because I don't like to have too many times like the same variable in a program declared in different places. So this is really the start size. I could just put an actual number in there for all of them to just start off with like the same size, but this is going to randomize it. And let's see, I think that this should look better if we call setup screen at the top. We put a function call. First thing it will do is come down here, run through all the icons and give them a shape, a color, a random XY location, and a random width, height, size. So now when I run it, it won't just look like a big diagonal of icons. All right, it's automatically like that. And we might want to, even prior to that, set the property of the background to have a color. Where was that background color? Here we go. I'm just going to kind of copy and paste, grab and steal that same line of code I did up above, so that at the very beginning it gets set to some color. There we go. The shapes can change, the locations can change, the colors can change. Now, you may also have noticed that in the sample code, the icons look a little bit transparent. So I think I can change my code to look that way as well. When you run it, see how they're kind of like, you can see through some of them to others, and they're lighter colors because they're transparent. So going back into my code, all right, this is how you would do that. You basically need a fourth parameter on any place that you use the RGB command. The RGB really takes up to 4 parameters. The first 3 are required, a red, a green, a blue value. But if you add a fourth parameter, that represents transparency. And you can see that in the documentation if you read it. But 0.5 is like half transparent. 0 would be fully transparent, like you wouldn't even see it. It'd be so see-through you don't see it. 1 is like when it's not transparent at all. So it's a decimal from 0 to 1. 0.5 being half transparent. So if you just go back to every RGB spot that there is and add a fourth parameter of 0.5, then you'll get the transparency. And that's it. One more thing is go back and put sounds into each of the color button on events, but I'm not going to bother with that right now. Keep this video from getting too out of hand. So you can do that one last thing and then you're done. Okay? Then you can click finish and submit it and have a great weekend and a happy Thanksgiving.